Welcome to Take Charge Tuesday. Yay! I am super excited about today because I think that this is one of those topics that people tend to um, underestimate the value of. Let's say that's what people do. They underestimate the value of doing this activity. And so today we're going to remove that obstacle, right? So stop underestimating the value of doing accessibility. So, first of all, even if there was absolutely nothing gained for you as a business owner by being accessible, you should do it anyway. So even if there was nothing at all, no monetary potential outcome, no one was going to come get you, there's no sanctions if you don't do it, nothing like that. Even if all of that was true, accessibility is a massive thing. And I like to think of it this way, and it's probably because of my experiences personally in life, but if we are if we expect for people to accommodate us, then we should accommodate them, right? And that us is whoever we are at whatever given point in time, and that them is whoever they are at any given point in time, right? And when I'll go, the reason why that's such an ingrained thing in me is when I first got to Cleveland, like over a decade ago now. Actually, I think it was exactly 13 years ago because my little sister today is her birthday and she is 14, and I got here when she was about 1. And when I first got to Cleveland, I worked with an organization called Maximum Accessible Housing Ohio, and MAHO, which is what Maximum Accessible Housing Ohio is for short. First of all, look it up. Great organization. What they do is that they actually help people who have accessibility issues to get housing and find housing accommodations. They build housing, they find housing, they retrofit housing for people who have accessibility needs. And hey, Alex, as a function of being a part of that organization, I very much got into the mindset of thinking about accessibility not as a thing that you do for a person, but a thing that you do for everyone. Because at some point in every single one of our lives, we are going to need some sort of accessibility feature or access, right? Like every single one of us is going to need something at some point. And so, what working with that organization taught me was, first of all, they're not usually doing accessibility when they were building and things like that. They weren't building for a specific person or even for a specific type of disability. What they were building for was for everybody. And when they put it that way, I was like, holy crap, we should all be doing that. Like, we should literally all be doing that all the time. Like, we should be thinking about everyone instead of just thinking about ourselves. And so, what I want us to be thinking about when we're talking about accessibility in the digital world is the same thing. Often, we're just thinking about ourselves. So, if you are hard of hearing or if you have vision issues or things like that, you will think about your specific issue and not really consider that there are a myriad other things that people have difficulty with. So how do we get past this little hurdle? How do we like think about things more equitably? So I have a few little steps, a few little things that I want us to keep in mind, right? So first of all, there are universal design, which is where I wrote this whole article and I have some notes here that I'm going to be looking at all about the idea of taking the concept of universal design and applying it to your website for your small business. First, because accessibility is very good for your business, meaning that the more people, the more accessible your website is, the more people can use it, which means that you have more access to potential customers. So, A, yay. And then B, accessibility is something that is becoming a standard in the internet. And when I say a standard, I mean it is a standard to be judged by. So if your website is not accessible, there are indeed people who rightfully are not because we are living in a litigious society, can come after you for violating essentially ADA laws for not having your website be accessible. And so what we want to do is avoid that nonsense altogether, because there isn't any reason not to be accessible when you can be. It's relatively easy to do. And so what we want to be doing is not just adhering to the baseline of the law. We need to also just be significantly more accommodating with what we do. So let's get back to those points. Things that you can do to just think about accessibility a little bit differently. First is using equitable, I'm going to say that wrong every time, equitable design features. So if there is something that you want people to do on your website, you want to make sure that the thing is doable by almost anybody. So if you have ever tried to use a website, and I'm going to raise my hand in advance because I know where I'm going with this. If you've ever tried to use a website where filling out the form that they ask you to complete for either making a purchase or for getting a download or something along those lines, and the form fields were not properly labeled, so you weren't always sure you were in the right form field for the right thing, or the form fields were very, very, very small, or the writing around the form fields were very, very small, or the button itself was very small, or you had to, instead of the whole button being a hyperlink, meaning you could click anywhere on the button, you had to click on a very specific spot on the button in order to get the button to activate. Anyone else ever had those issues with a form on a website? That is the opposite of accessible, right? So you want to be thinking equitably, meaning that if you on your best day have difficulty using this function, you should change it, right? So you need to be looking at your website and saying, this thing that is happening on my website is not working, right? It's not working for me. It is not working for maybe some other people. Have other people test it, not just yourself, because maybe you are like a perfect human and everything always works for you. And you just, like, every form on the planet was created for you, and every website thing was created so that you can use it. And so you are perfectly fine and you never understand why anyone has any problems. Well, first of all, have someone else look at it. Have someone else who is not your age, not your gender, someone else who is just different from you, look at it and see if they can experience the same exact ease of use that you can. And if they can, then maybe your website actually does have equitable design, but it is likely that they're going to find some problems, right? So flexibility. So equitability is going to be the first thing. Flexibility. Again, getting back to the form idea. And I'm using forms because forms are such a standard thing on our websites. If you have e-commerce, a part of making an e-commerce purchase is your form, right? I'm going to run down every single thing. We don't have that kind of time, but I do want to give you some highlights. So flexibility, meaning that if there are fields in your form that are not actually required for you to make a transaction with someone or for you to get enough information to do something useful, make those fields skippable, right? So I know I'm a marketer, and we marketers always want to get as much information as possible, except for that is not a good experience for someone who may have a variety of disabilities that could cause them to not be able to type in a specific order or any number of things. There are other, there are mental health challenges that people might have that might make it difficult for them to follow through on a form that has 15 different form fields. And so we don't want to put ourselves in a position where we are actually eliminating the ability for that person to do the thing that we want them to do because we're giving them too many tasks to do at once. So flexibility. This may not mean that you're going to eliminate all of those things from your form, but having some of those things be optional and skippable is a very, very useful thing. So flexibility, simple and intuitive is your third point. Things need to be as simple as humanly possible. I like to call the simplicity that I like to use, I call it broetry. So if you've ever heard of broetry before, I've probably used this term here I do not know who coined it. I know it's probably derogatory because it's so funny. That's the reason why I'm assuming it's derogatory. But broetry is the idea that you are writing in small enough sentences, short enough phrases that you're keeping your language simple enough to where someone can scan and comprehend. Now, I have mentioned that I have challenges myself. I am dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. I won't put a value on how dyslexic I am, but I am dyslexic. And so, because I'm dyslexic, I learned very early on to not attempt to read things because when I am trying to read something as a dyslexic person, I tend to get things jumbled up. And so, what I do instead is I scan. So if you make text on your website not scannable, meaning that it is too small and there are too many words in a one block, I can't adequately take a mental picture of what it says and then move forward. If I can't do that, I'm not going to read it. And I know that people are like, what? And I'm like, and mind you, I am a multiply degreed person. I have lots of I read constantly. I love audiobooks though. They're my jam. I avoided them for years because I was an idiot. Let's just get that out of the way. I was one of those people who was like, if you didn't read it with your eyeballs, it's not reading. As if, right? Like that's a totally non-accessible statement. And I don't know where my brain was. I was a child, mind you, when I used to say stuff like that. And by child, I mean I was 20. But that's beside the point. And so what I want you to get though is that either it's broetry or KISS, whatever you want to use to keep yourself in the simplicity mindset. Stay in the simplicity mindset because there are plenty of people who, again, we'll call it another phrase that I personally hate, but I know a lot of people use, which is invisible disability, meaning that there are people who don't have whatever their challenge is not written on their body. And so you may assume, well, all of my customers can understand and all of my customers can read and all of my customers can this or that. And that is not true. That is by far not true, right? So keeping things very simple is going to put us in the position to have way more people actually be able to read and understand. So that if someone is like me and has dyslexia, then they might be able to read and understand better because you're keeping your sentences short enough for them to take a snapshot of it and understand what it says. That is a very important step. As well, if you are here in the United States of America, you all might know, I don't know if you know, we have an average 7th grade reading level here in this country. That is not a derogatory statement. That is simply a statement of fact. And so for everyone who's like, well, I really like my big words. I love big words. I love them. I'm an SAT word girl, but I can't spell none of them because I'm dyslexic, but I do love using them. And, but at the same time, when I am writing, I don't. And I don't do that. I try very hard to not use words, especially if I'm not adding extra context or using them only to make a point, things like that. But you should keep it as simple as possible. Okay, tolerance for error. This is another one that I think that if we all did this, it would make our lives so much easier for our customers, for ourselves. Tolerance for error is one of those accessibility or universal design things that I think if more of us did it on a daily basis, everyone in America's life would get easier. Everyone in the world, tolerance for error. So what tolerance for error is the idea that everything shouldn't be exactly just so that if someone is off by a little bit, they can't experience your thing. By that, so remember I used the example of the button earlier. Some people have, I don't know if they couldn't possibly be doing this on purpose, but they have created lots and lots of hyperlinks where the hyperlink itself is so small or it is connected so tight to a bunch of other hyperlinks that it is going to be virtually impossible for someone to click on it without clicking on something else. That means that there's no tolerance for error. If the person doesn't exactly click on that one thing, they are not going to get the thing, right? We, again, going back to a universal experience, every single one of us, probably, if you've used a website recently, you've gotten a pop-up You go to a recipe website, there's a pop-up. You get a pop-up, and the worst no tolerance for error problem I have ever experienced is the pop-up that does not have a clearly marked and distinguished X to get out of the pop-up, right? And so that is such a crazy experience for people to have, where you're like, I can't get out of this pop-up. I will leave your website. First of all, I will leave your website. If I can't just hit it once and not get it and move away, I will leave. And so what you need to do, all of us, and I'm saying you specifically because everyone is doing this and it needs to stop right now, is first of all, slow down with the pop-ups. For goodness sake, give us a time, at least like spread it out so that you're not getting a pop-up the second you're landing on someone's website. First of all. And then second of all, make it so that it's easy to X out. Because if you're not making it so that it's easy to X out, again, marketer here, I'm the person who can tell you this because I know you're not losing a cajillion tons of business. Any person who told you that is lying to you. You are not missing out because you didn't make the X big enough for people to see. Make the X bigger. And if you don't make the X bigger, or if you don't have the ability to make the X bigger, then add a line that is not derogatory to let someone leave your pop-up. Okay, make it easy. We do not want to make it difficult for people to do things on our website. That is the opposite of universal design. Making things difficult. And I know that there are lots of people out there who will preach to you as a marketer. They're marketers, I'm marketer, and they're out here preaching, you want to make it hard. You want to make it hard for people to get out so that they have to follow through. That is not it. Because if you're making it hard for someone who does have complete full ability, let's just claim that there is such a thing. If you're making it hard for someone who does not have any issues with aiming their fingers, if you're making it hard for someone who does not have any vision issues, if you're making it hard for someone who does not have any motor control issues, if you're making it hard for them, then it is impossible, literally impossible for someone else who does have any of those issues. And I hope to God that this little soapbox preaching moment is hitting someone hard so that you can stop doing that, because you actually are making your entire experience really poor for someone who has an accessibility issue. And some of us find out that we have accessibility issues when something like that happens, when we run up against something where we're like, whoa, I can't see that. And it's not because I'm over 40. It's because it's too small, or it's hiding, or, this is just, it's not necessary, and it's making people's lives worse. Okay. So try really hard to be conscious of your effort so that people can miss the X and still get out. Someone can be relatively fat fingered or not have good motor control and still be able to use your website. That is something that we need to work on. And that is where the tolerance for error comes in. So if your website is so exact that someone who does not have good motor control couldn't use your website, then you need to fix that immediately. It is not, that's not a good marketing moment, even though some people will tell you that it is. And so lastly, in this moment, I want to talk about size and space and color. So we all know there are stats out there. I'm not sure I have them in this article. Okay, I don't have them in this article. But there are stats out there about the number of people who are colorblind. And color blindness shows up mostly in men, but it shows up in every section of our population. And what I think a lot of us don't realize is that color blindness is not always specific to color, but a lot of people are colorblind when it comes to contrast. And there are a lot of us out there who are making designs in Canva and then putting those designs on our website. And then those designs that we're putting on our website are not good contrast, meaning that the words on the design and, oh, wow, Alex's son has color blindness. It's a very common thing. So if there's not enough color contrast between the words and the image, then someone's not going to be able to read it. And you don't have to be colorblind in order to have that, inability to read the contrast. High contrast is very, very important, because we have these images on our website. They're meant to be doing something, but if they are very low contrast, then they're not exactly doing the job. And again, you may have gotten some very bad marketing advice that's like, if you keep it low contrast and people have to pay attention in order to see it and all this other stuff. That's just, again, trickery. We're not out here trying to trick people. I just want you to have a legitimate business where you're not trying to like use marketing trickery in order to get people to stay on your website, in order to get them to pay attention to you. No, especially because all of those little trickery things, like layering things on top of each other. I'm going to hide this behind this thing, or I'm going to scooch this over a little bit so that it's really close so that they accidentally click on it. All of those things that we're talking about where you're not spacing things out appropriately, the buttons are the wrong size, that, like I said, the X is almost invisible, or you're not using good contrast on your images. All of those things may end up making it so that someone who does have full ability falls into a well and ends up buying your product. Sure. A, that person isn't necessarily going to be your biggest fan. So there's that. But then B, you have just made it so that people who didn't want it couldn't get out because you didn't let them. And I don't want any of us out here creating marketing cages on purpose and trapping people with disabilities. Like, that is just dumb. The world is hard enough. We do not need to be out here making it harder on purpose. Like, God. And so honestly, I'm gonna wrap it up because I have a workshop where I'm gonna be talking more about this topic, and we'll actually work through what this looks like on a real website. We're gonna go through what it looks like for your websites. I'm actually gonna pop open someone's website who comes to the workshop and do an evaluation. I love doing this. And so if you come, you could potentially be the person who I choose to do that evaluation of. So let me go ahead and pop the link into the chat so that you are able to join us. But man, it's happening right now, 6 p.m. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. Like I said, I don't want us out here creating traps for people. That is not the goal. The goal is to make things more accessible. If you are somehow, some way being told by some marketer somewhere that it should be hard and people should not, you should make your X small and you should have your pop-ups do this and you should have, essentially, if you can't run every single one of those little bad pieces of advice through this criteria that I've just said here, then you need to not doing it. Nope, don't do it. Because we don't want to trap people. We're not trying to make it so that people have to buy our stuff. We don't want to build very poor relationships with people. And we wouldn't want someone doing that to us, right? I know I personally don't want it. And I know you don't want it. So we're not going to be the people who do it. And I also want y'all, whether you do it legally or not, which I am not suggesting you do it legally, call out people when they are doing it. Call them out. I'm not saying call them out in public. I'm just saying, like, send them a private message and say, hey, you know that button on your website? It's not clickable. Like, assume they don't know. Assume that they don't know that you couldn't get out of the X that you couldn't find the X on their pop-up. Assume they don't know that the image that they just posted has such low contrast that you couldn't read it. Assume they don't know. And then tell them, let them know, because if they're doing something like that and they don't know, it's better for us in a friendly environment to let them know, hey, friend, this is something that I'm running into as a problem, right? Okay, that's it for today. I'm very excited. Again, this is not where I thought I was going with this. I personally have experienced so many of these issues that it just, like, obviously rubs me the wrong way to have people experiencing these problems in the world. And so I want all of us to not be doing these things. So with that, I will see you all hopefully in the workshop in approximately 3 minutes. I'm hopping off to get onto it right now. And then other than that, have a fantastic week. I'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.